Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Dean Callan Show. Today I'm going to talk about ice. I don't really have a plan other than to wing it, and obviously somehow this has come up on my other computer, so I'm going to have to stop myself from hearing myself coming out of like multiple different audio sources. Let me just check to see. Yeah, overexposed or overgain every time. It's always the same thing. It's like, that's why. I see. All right, how does that sound? Let's hope that's nice. I can give it a little touch up. And good, all right. Anyway, welcome to the show. It's so funny, I didn't have to do anyone's audio and I still somehow ran late. So today I was supposed to be getting Carlos from iStudio London on the show, which I was really excited about, but unfortunately he wasn't able to do the show. He's like far too busy, and let's be honest, delivering ice to customers right now is way more important than coming onto the show and talking about delivering ice to customers. The guy has been out for the last, I think, year or so, missing, I think it's cartilage in his knee. He's actually on crutches and he's still going out to accounts and delivering. So, you know, I'm not going to be someone that gets in between that. But what I thought I'd do, show must go on, right? I didn't even do a show last week. So I thought I'd do a show and I'd actually just kind of talk about the topics, ask you guys if they're relevant to you, but talk about the topics that I thought were relevant to talk about with Carlos. I'm just going to turn the audio off on this TV over here because it's relaying back to me, which is kind of very distracting. Right, that looks like it's worked. And I'm going to turn the aircon back on and I'm going to get my little ice out of my freezer. So I thought I'd talk about my journey with clear ice. Right now, I haven't like worked full time in a bar for a long time. Right now, it was what, 2010, the last bar I worked in where I was like, I would have considered myself a full-time bartender, and at that point, yes, people were making clear ice. People were carving ice balls and doing things like that. Ice diamonds, as we've seen with 42 Below Cocktail World Cup and Hidetsugu Ueno-san. But actually, like, I wasn't seeing clear ice in every single bar. The thing that prompted me to do an episode or try to have a chat around clear ice today was the fact that actually, I went to a bar recently out in the countryside. It was called The Pig. Right, so let me know if the sound's still robotic there, Diogo. I went to a bar in the countryside. It was called The Pig, right? It's actually kind of like, imagine Soho House, but not exclusive members club and like slightly better service, I would say. No offense to the guys at Soho House, but the service at this place was impeccable. One of the things I noticed, the drinks were delicious. Executed really well. They looked really nice. They had this thing going where they've got like lots of old cool kind of vintage cocktail glassware you'd expect to see in your grandma's house or something like that. But one of the things I noticed, and I couldn't, it just didn't get away from me, was that they actually didn't have clear ice, and it didn't bug me because the drinks still tasted great. They didn't look as good. But one of the things I came to kind of, I guess I kind of come to the conclusion to myself that this is not like a list chasing bar, right? Like I had made the decision that actually, you know, the kind of bars that want to be in 50 best list, they're the ones that'll pay the extra money or integrate the extra cost into their drinks to have perfectly clear cut ice. And then I thought, is that right? I'd love to do an episode where I chat to people, and this will be the first of, I think, a couple of episodes on this, because if you're watching this you know, 2 days, 3 days after the live feed went up, then, you know, comment and give me your thoughts. And in a couple of weeks or a couple of months, whenever we get round to it, we can revisit this with a lot more ammunition, a lot more information. Now, if I can find this video, I'm going to play you a video, right, of Carlos. He actually apologized for not being able to make it to the show today. So I want to get that out of the way before I forget. Where are you? All right, so this is Carlos.
You see that box? That's you.
Man, how much are you delivering these days? Crazy. I'm with your freaking thing, bro.
Hello guys, how are you doing? Sorry I can't make it today.
Right, so that was Carlos. He said, sorry, he can't make it today. But look, Carlos is obviously very busy. He's delivering a lot of ice. One of the things I wanted to talk to him about was what type of bars he's seeing ordering these kind of ice cubes. And I mean, without naming any names, it's everything from like 5-star hotels to strip clubs. It's starting to spread. It's becoming more common. I'm not saying you'd expect to see it in a suburban pub just yet, but I wouldn't be surprised. So my question, if there's anyone out there that wants to kind of share their thoughts, is clear ice a new standard, or is it a trend that we might not be able to keep up in the future because of costs implications and such, or the consumer doesn't end up kind of demanding it? For me, I know that on this channel, the most successful video I've ever made was how to make clear ice cubes at home hack. Now, I did this years and years and years ago, and unfortunately for me, I thought I'd come up with this idea. There are no new ideas, but I took the Cocktail Kingdom little square cubes, and I put it inside a container that had insulation around it. Now, I've obviously moved on from taking my own container and putting my own insulation in it. I just buy a Coleman 6-pack cool box. If you're watching this video and you want to know, ask about the cool box, and I'll put a link in the description. And it's perfect to put 2 of these in. Now I'm going to let these melt, but what you can't see, maybe I can go, oh, overhead doesn't seem to be on. That's interesting. Let's see if we can get that on. We'll go back to it in a minute. But what I've done is I've poked holes in the bottom of these ice cube trays so that it works like one of these. Now this is one of your, bought on Amazon clear ice cube makers, and it has a insulated outside. It has 4 little poppy bits on the inside, so you can pop out your, frozen chunk of ice. And long story short, in there, they have holes in the bottom of them. So it freezes directionally, pushing all the air out, and then all the air and impurities come out into the bottom of here. And when this defrosts a little bit, hopefully it'll happen during this video, you can pop that out and you've got 4 clear ice cubes. It works, but it doesn't work amazingly well. I wouldn't say it's the best way to do it. Me personally, my favorite way, and I guess the most effective way to get around 6 cubes, is to do this without these guys in it. These were obviously designed for shaking, but these days I've given up on shaking on this. I'm back to shaking with I've got an ice machine in my fridge inside the house. I just bring one of these out. I put it into one of these guys. Also, bear in mind that when I've got guests in here, it gets warm really quickly, and the cubed ice starts to deform. And when it's gone a little bit past the post, it goes into this tray and back into the freezer, where it just becomes blocks. And I use these for shaking as well, or more often than not, they actually go into stirring those ones. So that's how I manage my ice at home. But obviously, this is not a cocktail bar. I'm not purchasing ice for the sake of reselling it. So when I buy ice, it's because I'm going to consume drinks and I want them really nice, clean ice. And I get a really good deal from Carlos and the team from Ice Studio London. They've been supporting me right from the beginning of this show. So once I got started making these ones, or buying these ones, I couldn't go back. And there's a good reason for that. As great as it is to have this, it takes about 2 days to freeze from the top down and get those little cubes going. Just checking on comments, just in case someone's asked the question, to get some directional freezing going. You obviously have to thaw it out so you can break these apart without damaging the silicon mold that they're in. This one, again, you have to remember that I've got a freezer space about that big in there. So even if I had 4 of these, they take a couple of days. And after a couple of days of freezing, I now have 4, and they take up this much space. If I'm to actually grab out of the freezer here 4 pre-cut cubes, you'll notice one thing really quickly. In fact, that this is how much space 4 pre-cut cubes takes up in the freezer, right? So if you're looking at that, that's 4 pre-cuts. And then this, because you do need to have it in the housing for the first period, like it's quite a considerable difference in size, right? So I can fit like, what is it, 32 of these. So if you're looking at it, 4 by 4, and then double that, you know, you've got 32 ice cubes in the same amount of space. You've now got 4. Even if I were to decant these over the course of a couple of weeks, and I've got 32, right? Now 32, you know, divided by 4, I don't even, my math is absolutely terrible. But what is that, 8 or something? I don't know. But it's going to take 8 turns, like, or let's say 5 turns. Best case situation scenario. It takes you 5 turns to make 30 of these pieces of ice. Like at 2 days each turn, that's 10 days to make 30 pieces of ice. And it's filling up this much space, but this needs to keep going back in next to it to freeze over. So after a while, you're building up these, but that's going in. Once you get to there, I mean, that's all your freezer space gone. So now you've only got cubes, and you've got about, what, 36, 40 of them max before the entire freezer's full, and you can't go anywhere with it. And if you invite 6 guests around, you know, they're not going to last very long. So in fairness, 10 days, an hour a day, like you're looking at 10 hours work. Is it really worth it? Or is it worth spending the 40, 50 quid buying a bag? Now, obviously, if you're making drinks at home, like this is a very like glorious, but effectively still a home bar. If you are making drinks at home, you don't have to go out and spend all this money. Obviously, I'm making drinks for my wife, and I'm making drinks for her friends, and I'm making drinks for bartenders mostly. So there's a high standard to adhere to. And once I'd started doing this, it was difficult to stop. I mean, I was kind of hooked on it. And Carlos came in and saved the day, because ultimately I'm not just buying ice from him, I'm buying time. My time is valuable. I could be out earning money in those 10 hours. And let's say I do 1 day's work. Is 1 day's work worth more than £150? Like, it's 50 quid to buy a bag of these ice cubes. You know, all I've got to do is earn 50 quid in a day, and I've got my return on investment. Right now, I haven't run a bar in a long time, so I don't know what the current standard is. But any of the top bartenders I speak to that are doing this cubed ice thing, they're buying them in, because to do the kind of volumes that you're going to need in a cocktail bar this day and age, you would need a lot of space to be making the ice. And B, you need a lot of time. Now, recently I went to Public, which is a bar in West London, and the guys, although having a small amount of space, they've bought like a mini Kleinbell machine. And a Kleinbell machine, for those that don't know, is literally one of the like top machines you can buy to make blocked ice. And they're making blocks, they're bagging them, they're pulling them out, they're putting them into a chest freezer next to it. So they're taking up about as much space as this. And because they're a small bar, that's plenty enough ice for them. But they're also looking to help bars in the area by supporting them with some ice, which is a great program. But again, those Kleinbell machines are very expensive. They're labor intensive and they take up space. And also, they've actually got consumable components to them. So it's not as simple as just turning it on, putting water into it. You need to filter the water first, but also you have to buy heavy duty plastic bags that sit inside the freezer. And the water constantly runs through. And from what I understand, I don't own one, but this is what I understand. They're freezing directionally from the top down. And then the bag, it comes out in the bag. And you can't reuse those bags. I think there's someone in Europe making new renewable bags. Eddie from Cocktails for You, or Carlos, one of the two boys, told me about that. But when you look at it, it's not as simple as I've got a block ice machine and you turn it on and block ice pops out like your Hoshizaki ice machines would have done back in the day. It's actually a bit of work. Now, looking at this, obviously another point when you move to this type of ice, you need to let it temper. So if you look at camera 2, you can see that came out completely frosty frozen. And I've given it a couple of minutes of me just ranting about ice, and it's still not ready to have drinks poured over it. So you need to know the ice, and you need to have a bit more of a system, because often when I'm making drinks for my friends, I'm just pulling ice out, crack, crack, crack. It's not the best. It doesn't impress every time, but I'm often not bothered with giving it time to temper, whereas this is the way it should be done. Now, I'm going to stop talking and make myself a drink, because it's a good excuse to have a drink being on the show. Oh, there was my glass. Right, so I wanted to ask the question of bartenders, especially if anyone is tuned in. Are you guys doing this block ice stuff at home? Are you doing it in your bars, and how are you sourcing it? So Diogo, I don't know if I can add that. Yeah, there we go. So it's been added on Facebook. Diogo says, I think Jeffrey Morgenthaler did a study on how clear ice affects or not the dilution of the drink. The results are pretty similar, so I must say it's just a beautiful trend. Right, so yeah, we'll see. Merlin Griffiths has commented with an ice cube tray link. I will check that out. I'll have a look at it. This little one that I've got here works reasonably well. That foam was actually the packaging that it came in. On all the description, it's just that. It's just this bit that they're using. But in fairness, you know, this was an extra little bit of insulation. So technically, I could have been exaggerating by fault of my own. How much space that takes up? Because if you can get that to work with that, great. But with my freezer, I did a couple of tests, and it definitely worked better that way. Right. Now, I'm going to make myself a rum Ottawa. Right, so question for anyone out there that's thinking about moving or has moved to clear ice. How much is it costing you, and how are you doing it? Do you think it's worth the investment? Me personally, I think it makes a big difference. I noticed bars not having the clear ice. I'd become so accustomed to it so quickly. I'd become accustomed to getting really nice clear ice in high-end cocktail bars that when I didn't get it, I noticed it. I stopped noticing it a few years ago. You know, I remember going to Scout, and the lighting in Scout was such that every time that the glass came out with the drink, like that ice block just looked supreme. It was so good. And I just remember looking at it and being like, oh, it's so beautiful. But now I get perfectly clear ice, and I'm kind of so accustomed to it that it's not a surprise to me anymore. And I think, is it because I've got clear ice at home, which is obviously a bit of a luxury, and I wouldn't be able to do it if it wasn't for Carlos and the team from Ice Studio London. But how many actual guests care about whether or not there's clear ice or not? That's the question. And yeah, Jeffrey Morgenthaler, even in his book, he said he did all the clear ice stuff. He froze things, he boiled things, he directionally, froze them and all the rest. And he said, just buy the ice. It's not worth your time. Which at the time I was like, man, that's lazy. You can totally make it at home. But if you're working in a bar, it's probably not worth it. I'd like to see just how far extended the clear ice trend has actually gone. I know I've seen it a lot in American bars. I've seen it in Australia. It's definitely huge in London. It's everywhere in London. But I haven't had enough travel over the last few years to see just how far it's actually gotten outside of London. There's a luxury to having clear ice delivered. Right, so Jonas says, at least in Vilnius, people notice the clear ice and comment about it when it's served in their drinks. In Lithuania, we have a company called Lido Maestro, or Ice Masters in English. So we buy ice cubes and shards from them. The price comes out like 20 to 30 cents per cube, which is actually pretty good. So compared to how much work it would take to keep making the ice, it's worth it. You know, this is a strong point as well. One of the first things I learned about ice that just kind of blew my mind was Ueno-san came to do a speech about ice. And way back in the day, I've actually got his own tools. Like I swapped him some of my tools for some of his tools. So these are the tools he was using. He brought with him on the first trip. He was using them for one of the demos he did when he went to Cocktail World Cup way back in the day. And he was teaching people how to make ice diamonds. After that, he did a demonstration on ice. I think it was for Pernod Ricard at I can't remember what it's called. It was like it was a venue that was an offspring of Tony C's, or a consultation that he did. Zetter Townhouse, that's it, Zetter Townhouse. Ueno-san went to Zetter Townhouse and did a demo there, and one of the things I'd forgotten from his first seminar, but certainly picked up on that second one that I went to, was that he stopped using the ice chisels. You know, like this was how I was introduced to, like, you know, carving ice. You'd have guys doing this, and they'd be like making their ice cubes or ice balls or whatever it was, and that's what you'd see. And as they got closer down, you know, I'm gonna show off my fancy ice knife now. Check this guy out. How cool is that? I love that knife. Right. As they got closer, they'd start carving and like fine tune to make the ice ball, you know, and they'd be carving out the ice. But actually, when Ueno-san was breaking down a huge block for us, rather than lots of small pieces that he was cutting ice spheres out of, or ice balls, he said he doesn't use a saw or a chainsaw or any of that. He actually uses a knife and just puts it in the middle of the block, puts pressure on it, taps it, it breaks down. Now, I'd seen him do that before, but one of the points he made was, as you're breaking down the block, if you're cutting it and it splits naturally, and then you sit it down, you split it and you split it, there's no wastage. There's no pieces of ice shaving off, you know? And I've seen bars where people are hammering things and putting a chainsaw through stuff, and ice is going absolutely everywhere. It's all melting. If you've paid for that ice, you're throwing money away. Like, that's kind of the be all and end all of it. You're buying ice in, you're buying a huge block of ice in, and then you're wasting half of it because you're smashing the ice up. I remember we had clear ice in the last bar I worked at in 2010 Kanaloa, but we'd buy big blocks in and we'd smash it. Like, literally, there was a bar back one time smashing it with a hammer. Talk about wastage. But that, we wanted big chunks that were going into massive big share ice chests. It was a tiki bar, so it wasn't as, oh, that's delicious. It wasn't as important to have these laser cut ninja precision stuff. Now, I'm going to show you something I've been working on, which I'd like to get some advice on. Obviously, I'm not working in bars anymore, and a lot of making drinks, if you keep doing the same thing over and over, without having to speak to your peers, it becomes instinctual to do things a certain way. It's just natural. For me, I want to start relearning the craft because I want to open a bar. And when I go to open up the bar, I miss having a manual. You know, I want to, not a Bible, don't call it a Bible, but a handbook for the bar. Now, hopefully that handbook will live digitally, like on the show. But the idea being, I would need to go through, see what the standard operating procedures are for things, see what the standard practice is for things, and then apply that. And one of the things I recognized was that different size ice in different size glasses makes for different net drink volume. I've talked about this before on the show, but I'm going to try to drag in an image I made last night, and I'm going to ask if people don't mind for your thoughts on it. So my thought process was to get as many glasses as I can possibly get my hands on. And when I've got those glasses, all right, now where would I have saved the image? This is dangerous. Come on, ice. No, doesn't look like it's there. All right, well, you know, there's not much I can do if I can't find it now. Maybe I can send an image of it to myself and then we can look at it. Anyway, I was getting to a stage where I was going through the different glassware, and if I look at these two, for example, right, got them next to each other, and for these, this is the Nude Finesse Highball, I think it is, and this is the Nude Remy Savage glass. I'm going to put two of the same. So this is 3.5 centimeters by 3.5 centimeters by 13, right? Now, they're very similar glassware. Like, you might not really even notice the difference between them if you'd gone into a bar one day and then come back a couple of days later and you get the same drink in a different glass. But my thought process is, if I take, let's say I take two of these, just for the interest of looking at the difference in sizes. Now, I've created this ice ruler ages ago to do this process without having to like do this process, if that makes sense. Got this guy and now this guy. So my thought is, I always want a 1 centimeter wash line here, right? That's just my standard for all drinks, whether it's a up drink or not. 1 centimeter wash line. Now I'm realizing I'm probably going to spill that if I pour out of that. So in a new shaker, right? Pour over till we get to 1 centimeter wash line. There we go. Oh, that's a bit too much. How much is it? Okay, it's 8. Right, I'm going to do the same with the next one. So that's what's left in that. Next guy. Right. And we'll see just how much of a difference there is. Now, my idea was to go through and do this process with as many different glasses as I possibly can. See the way that one lifted? Let's have a look and just see how much of a difference there is. Right, so you got quite a bit. So in that first one, this is 125 plus 10. Let's say, just double check on that for 15. So 135, 140. And then this one, 125 plus 65. I'm just going to double check that. Yeah, that's 65. Right. So 140 to 165, that's 25 mil. That's a full shot of difference between like what look like quite similar glassware, and it's largely down to this being tapered. So that tiny bit of tapering that you can see in those two glasses, same piece of ice, roughly the same wash line. This one's a tiny bit shorter, so that's why the lines look slightly different. That makes for a whole measure extra of liquid. So I don't have a clear one here, but 25 mil is that much, right? So I don't know. You tell me. Is it important to kind of do that work, especially before you're kind of deciding on which glassware to use? And also, if you change the size of the spear by like just 2.5 centimeters, 5 centimeters out, it's going to completely change the size of those. So having perfectly accurate ice cubes, especially if you're working to a wash line, and a lot of the top cocktail bars these days, they've got these pre-made, beautiful, flavorful, clear cocktails in bottles that have been made prior. If people are hand cutting that ice and it comes up short, there's a big difference there. 25 mils, a drink is a lot of wastage for 125, 130 mil drink. So it's something to consider. Now, yeah, 25 mils is a big difference, right? Like, I'm going to add that to broadcast. Look at that. Bah. It is a big difference. And I think without doing this thought, without taking this into consideration, there's a potential to lose a lot of money if you're not doing things accurately and it's not kind of costed into your program. And I've been thinking about it a lot because I know when I open a bar, I'm going to be buying ice from Ice Studio London. That's just how I'm going to do it. So I have to kind of take into account what glassware looks great, feels great, is tactile, has a nice clean lip, but actually works really well with a multitude of different ice cubes. Now, I have a lot of footage. I still need to capture a little bit more, but I did go and check out Ice Studio London's facilities. I can't show you the whole thing because actually I tried to edit some video this morning. But if anyone knows anything about cameras, I shot about an hour's worth of footage in DCI 4K, which is larger than Ultra HD 4K, in XFAVC 10-bit 422 color on a cinema gamut, so it needs to be graded and color corrected. So the files are enormous, and when I went to render, I went to render them, it just wasn't going to happen, so I had to cancel it, and I just selected a couple of little snippets that can show you how the pros are cutting their ice and getting such precision. Now, obviously, I'm going to have to queue up this video because it finished rendering literally just as I came out into here. And please, I had to just drag a lot on for the color. So when you look at the color, it looks a bit off, but that's not my fault. I did this in like 30 seconds. I don't know if you can hear me, but I forgot. What you're seeing here is ultra slow motion of ice block about to be cut. I forgot just how slow motion it is, but this is a really big saw, and the guys have the base of it leveled off and the blade is leveled off, and they measure it to precision. They start a cut, they bring it back out, and they're measuring to make sure that if it says it's going to be 6 centimeters tall, it's actually 6 centimeters tall. And then they cut right through. I've cut towards the end of it. They're cutting right through, and if you can see, there's very little to no wastage there. These guys are getting it bang on every single time. I've seen them cut through one of these blocks piece by piece by piece, making sure every single measurement was perfect, front and back. If the ice cubes aren't exactly the right size, they're broken down and used for shaking ice. but it means that every single time, like you can't cut ice that precise, that fast without the equipment. So for me, you're either investing thousands of pounds into this kit, and these guys have 15 Kleinbell machines, 15 of the big ones. Yeah, they've got 15 of the really big ones, but they're then breaking down these ice cubes piece by piece to custom sizes. So I absolutely adore this because I sat and went through all my ice blocks that I was buying, or I was given as well. I got a bunch of samples at the beginning, and I tried them in my different glassware. And actually, I realized that because some of the glasses are tapered and others aren't, in some glasses, 3.5 squared by 13.5 centimeter or whatever it was, will pop up and float. So I needed 4 centimeters by 4 centimeters, and so on. And in other glasses, they were too heavily tapered at the bottom. So I needed to do the 3x5 by 3x5 squared, and just allow it to like stir it a little bit, like Eric Lorenz does, and allow it to melt just a tiny bit at the bottom, so it kind of drops down and fits in, and then start topping up my drink. Whereas these guys, you could make sure that you've got exactly the right piece of ice for your setup, and then order 50 of them, and they cut them to size, and away they go. Carlos last night was telling me that he has to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning now to keep up with demand. There's a lot of people back buying ice again, so that kind of it's great to see he's busy. It would be terrible if it was the other way around. Anyway, it would have been great to have Carlos sit here. I think we'll pick this up at another date. If anyone watching this has any comments, any little things I've missed, something you'd like me to actually pick up with Carlos in the future, I've got a lot of different sizes of ice here. I do plan on working on them a little bit. In fact, let me see if I can. I've got an image here that I wanted to get people's advice on. I'm going to show it the last thing I do. Let me see if I can send it to my iMac from my phone. I've taken a photo of a screen on Photoshop. Let me see. Now, if I can bring this up on the broadcast, which I seem to be struggling to do. Oh, that's what I've done. I've made my life hard. Right, downloads. Where's the photo I just sent myself? Come on. You can do it, Dino. There it is. Drag that into my media pool. Or maybe not. Why are you not working? See, this is one of the things I can never understand. Ah, that's why. Downloads is in the cloud. Evil. No. Ah, I really wanted to show you this. Let me see tools. I'm just going to change the file type so that I can recognize it. All right, right. I'm going to be 2 seconds, and I'll put this up on the screen, and I'll get some feedback from anyone that might be interested. Now, what I've done is I've tried to make a standard for how I would rate all the different ice and glasses in my bar, right? So you'd start, I'd have the bar manual, and we'd have gone through every single type of glass, and then broken down what the net volume is and everything for the glass. So I'm just going to put it up on the screen, and then and you tell me what you think. Right. Nope. Oh, it looks terrible. It's a shot. It's a photo of a photo. But here you can see, right? Like I've rushed this, but I've put the Nude Finesse whiskey glass, which is basically very similar to the glass that Remy Savage does, but it hasn't got quite as heavy a taper down to the bottom. At the bottom, it's got a tiny little bit of a taper, but not enough that you notice it. It's almost dead square. It's a 10.5 ounce glass or 300 mils. Yes, for the sake of, keeping things neat, I have just rounded up and down the numbers to make it a bit more aesthetically pleasing. So it's not like 2.20 whatever or 2.0058 ounces. So I've got the ice size in inches, and then in centimeters, I've got the wash line. Now, obviously it's 0.389 something, but I put 0.4 of an inch because it's a bit easier. 1 centimeter wash line, and then how much the net volume. So if I take that glass and its gross volume is 300 mil, and I put this ice cube in, which is 5 by 5 by 6, with a 1 centimeter wash line, so that's your little window at the top, you should be able to fit evenly 110 mil into that glass, right? So if I do that for every single glass that I've got with every different, ice cube size, or most of the common ice cube sizes, my theory is that, I'll be able to, I guess, cut out a lot of the guesswork and wastage that might happen when you're designing a cocktail to go in a particular glass. So if I know I'm going to be using a certain size ice cube, and I'm stuck with this type of glass, not that I'm upset by that, I love this glass, but if I know I've got a certain type of glass and I've got a certain size ice cube I can use, and the drink, I need to make the drink land at 110 mil. Now, if it doesn't land at 110 mil because it's a classic or it's a bigger drink, or I now know without having to make it and pour it out to switch it out. If I have to, I really need the drink to be a bit bigger, I could change glassware. If not, I could put a slightly smaller ice cube, or change either the size or the shape of the ice cube so that, well, not the shape, it's still going to have the same volume. I can change the size of the ice cube so that a slightly larger drink will fit in there. Or if, for example, I needed it to be 90 mil, how do I make up that extra 20? Different shape of ice. I'd get a slightly larger cube of ice so it would just not fit in the glass, and shave the 4 corners off so it falls evenly into the glass. Because actually that 20 mils, it might be that you're making let's say a Balvenie ton 1509 old fashioned, and you need to bring the price down just that extra little bit so that it still tastes proportionately right, like an old fashioned should taste. Not too much sugar, not too much dilution, but it fills the glass without costing an absolute arm and a leg. If you can drop 20 mils off the end volume of the drink, that's a good 15 mils of Balvenie. That's going to drop the cost on a really expensive whiskey cocktail considerably. And just having that thought process and having the data in front of you, I think would help when you're starting out bartending and, this is all new to you. Anyway, that was me winging it, talking about ice for what looks like 40 minutes. Wow, I can talk shit with the best of them. I hope it was somewhat entertaining. I hope that one of the points that I made landed or was helpful. And if you'd like to see this actually discussed with a couple of industry people sat here, let me know in the comments and we'll see if we can get that organized. Until not next week, but the week after. Next week I'm on holiday. But till not next week, but the week after, enjoy yourselves. Have fun. Don't work too hard. See you soon.